From 1840 until 1940, freak shows by the hundreds zigzagged across the United States, from the tiniest towns to the largest cities, parading their lineups of dwarfs, giants, twins, bearded women, fire breathers, and other human curiosities. By today's standards, such spectacles would be seen as cruel and dehumanizing. Yet for 100 years, the freak show was widely accepted as one of America's most popular and thrilling forms of entertainment. And in today's video, we'll look at the 15 unbelievable circus freaks you won't believe existed. Number 15, Emma Leach. In 1771, long before Barnum's empire, a woman named Emma Leach became the first human curiosity publicly exhibited in the United States. A dwarf, just 22 inches tall, she was showcased in Boston and immortalized in Ames's Almanac, where her portrait was printed alongside political figures like John Dickinson and Catherine Macaulay. But only Emma's image came with a written article, one that reduced her to her size and physiology, ignoring her thoughts, voice, or history. While it described much of her body, the author noted that the account may not be so particular as the curious would desire, because Emma refused an accurate examination. That refusal, though subtle, was an act of resistance. In a world obsessed with her physicality, she denied complete access. She remained partly unknowable, human in a system built to dehumanize. Emma Leach didn't volunteer to be remembered as a spectacle, but even now, her quiet defiance echoes louder than the gawking ever did. Number 14, the longest bearded lady. Madame de Vere wasn't just another bearded lady. She held the record, 14 inches of facial hair that stunned crowds across America. Born in Kentucky sometime in the 1840s or 50s, her first name, possibly Mary or Jane, remains debated. What's certain is her legacy. Married to her manager, J.W. de Vere, she began performing publicly in 1884 at Huber's Museum in New York and soon joined Sells Brothers Circus. Her touring career stretched decades, with appearances for Campbell Brothers in 1906, Yankee Robinson in 1908, and still going strong in 1912 with the Patterson shows. That same year, while passing through Olwine, Iowa, Madame de Vere fell ill and passed away. Her beard made her a marvel, but it was her endurance, working through eras of mockery and spectacle, that shaped her story. She didn't hide what made her different. She used it. In a world that tried to turn her into a punchline, she remained center stage. Number 13, the illusionist of two selves. Fred Van, known on stage as Fredda Fred, claimed to be born in 1908, but his performance had nothing to do with numbers. He was a half-and-half performer, presenting one side of his body as male, the other as female. He wasn't intersex. He was a lady impersonator using costuming to split himself down the middle. And the illusion worked. Fred claimed to appear in Freaks, the 1932 cult film. Though he's not in the credits, Josephine Joseph played the lead he/she, but Fred may have been in the background. In 1933, under the name Francis Farrell, he performed at the Century of Progress World's Fair in Chicago, boasting he'd toured every U.S. state and played all major vaudeville circuits. Later, he drifted into geek shows, biting the heads off chickens to survive. Yet in the 1970s, long past the era of glam, he revived the wig and returned as Fredda Fred under Ward Hall's Sideshow banner. Even aging, he refused to disappear. Number 12, the Fat Lady of Coney Island. Amanda Siebert wasn't always known as Jolly Irene. Born in 1880, she weighed a modest 120 pounds until giving birth at 21. Then everything changed. A sudden hormonal disorder caused her body to balloon out of control, eventually reaching nearly 700 pounds. In a world that turned size into spectacle, Irene leaned in. She joined the Ringling Brothers Sideshow, adopting the moniker Jolly Irene, a name both marketing trope and personal truth. By many accounts, her spirit really was joyful. When she became too large to travel in standard train cars, she limited her performances to Ringling's New York runs, building her home base in Coney Island. There, she became an icon. People came for the size, but stayed for the presence, bold, kind, and unbothered by whispers. Irene didn't choose the condition, but she chose what to do with it. She wasn't a sideshow freak. She was a woman who refused to let the world shrink her worth. Number 11. The joined performers. Lucio and Simplicio Godino were born conjoined in the Philippines in 1908. As children, they were brought to Coney Island and displayed until the New York Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children intervened. With no parents to claim them, they were adopted by the Philippine ambassador to the U.S., a decision that changed all. The boys were educated, learned music, and found their voice on stage. In 1929, they married a pair of non-conjoined Filipino identical twins and created a vaudeville act that blended patter, dance, and music. They weren't just a curiosity anymore. They were a performance. But in 1936, tragedy struck. Lucio died of pneumonia. Doctors attempted a risky and unprecedented separation, successful by surgical standards, but Simplicio died days later from cerebrospinal meningitis. They had lived their lives fused together, but always with purpose. In a world that called them a spectacle, they fought to become artists. When they left, it was as individuals, but remembered as one. Number 10. The family of albinos. They came to America with ghost white hair, pale skin, and eyes that shimmered under gaslight. The Lucases were a real French family born with albinism. But for Barnum, that wasn't bizarre enough. After spotting them in Amsterdam in 1857, he concocted a fantasy, claiming they were Negroes from Madagascar who slept with their eyes open. He renamed them the Wonderful Heliophobus family and sold them as a spectacle. In New York, he placed them in his American Museum, where crowds swarmed to stare. They toured under W. W. Coles, Lemon Brothers, and others. Antoinette died mid-tour, but her brother Rudolph kept going, playing violin on vaudeville stages until he died in Kansas City in 1909. Behind the staged fiction was a real family, artists surviving on spectacle, swallowed by a story they didn't write. They were never villains, never monsters, just people born different, trying to exist in a world that only saw them through lies. Number 9. Frida Pushnik. In the 1930s, Frida Pushnik was carried out on a velvet pillow, and the room fell silent. Born without arms or legs, she had only a small stump on one side, yet her presence eclipsed the stage. She learned to thread needles, apply makeup, crochet, and even type, all without hands. At 10, she stunned audiences at Ripley's first Believe It or Not auditorium during the 1933 World's Fair in Chicago. She later toured the U.S. and joined Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey in 1943. Her sister Irma, once a trapeze artist, worked quietly backstage. Frida left the circus in 1956, but kept living loud, appearing in cult horror films like House of the Damned and Sideshow. She never begged for pity. She didn't want to be saved. She showed thousands that strength isn't in muscle or limbs. It's in what you do when the world stares and expects nothing. Frida wasn't an act. She was the truth, and she made sure you remembered her name. Number 8. The Lapland Giantess. She walked through Stockholm like a monument. By 18, Christina Larsdottir stood nearly 2 meters tall. In 1837, she met King Carl XIV Johann, and soon after she toured across Europe, Denmark, Germany, France, and England. Some questioned her gender. The Karolinska Institute confirmed she was biologically female, but Stina was more than her body. Fluent in multiple languages and smart with money, she knew her image sold tickets, and she owned it. She paid off her family's debts, bought land, and turned spectatorship into survival. In 1854, a brutal snowstorm left her injured. Gangrene set in, and she died at 35. Scientists dug her up years later, hungry to dissect what they never understood in life. But the truth is, Storstina's legacy wasn't just in her height. It was in how she stood, never as a freak, never as a joke, but as a woman who refused to shrink. She didn't just rise above the crowd, she owned the damn stage. Number 7. Joe the Leopard Boy. He stepped on stage marked in patches, his skin a living pattern of light and dark. His real name was A.E. Bichelle, born in 1869, an African-American man with leukoderma. His skin became his label. Barnum gave him the costume, the name Joe the Leopard Boy, and the cage. He worked in dime museums, cramped, fading spaces where humanity was erased and turned into a display. No one asked his story. They just stared. The act swallowed him whole. By 1909, Joe reportedly fell through a trapdoor backstage and died. He was 40. His skin made him visible, but it never made him known. He lived between mirrors and bars, between who he was and what they made him pretend to be. When the show ended, no one cheered, no headlines. There was just silence. Joe wasn't a myth. He was a man, boxed in, renamed, forgotten. And yet, under the paint and stage lights, there was always a heartbeat no one bothered to hear. Number 6. Willie Popeye Ingram. Willie Ingram was 4 when he realized his eyes could do something most people's nightmares couldn't match: pop out nearly an inch from his sockets. It hurt. It scared people. But it made them look. Growing up in Decatur in the 1930s, he didn't get to blend in, so he chose to stand out. He joined Walter L. Wanis and Sons Sideshow and worked every fair, every carnival. Some laughed, some gasped, some looked away. Willie stayed. He landed in Ripley's Believe It or Not, made the tabloids, and even acted in the 1974 cult horror film The Freakmaker. People called him strange. But off stage, he was a man finding purpose inside a body the world didn't understand. His condition wasn't his identity, it was just the lens through which others saw him. He performed not for fame, but to matter. Willie didn't ask to be a spectacle. But if people were going to stare, he made damn sure they'd never forget. What do you think about him? Let us know. Number 5. Zelda Rubinstein. Born in 1933 in Pittsburgh to Jewish immigrant parents, Zelda Rubinstein grew up small but unmistakable. A rare pituitary condition limited her growth, and by adulthood, she stood just 4 feet 3 inches tall. For over 20 years, she worked quietly as a medical lab technician, blending into the background. Then, in her mid-40s, she stopped hiding and stepped onto a stage. Acting found her, or maybe she found it. Her breakout came as the unforgettable medium Tangina in Poltergeist, a performance so eerie and heartfelt it became her signature. Zelda leaned into her strangeness with strength, appearing in 16 Candles, Picket Fences, and narrating the scariest places on Earth. She played characters who were odd yet real, mirrors of herself. What others called a limitation, she turned into a power. Zelda never shrank from who she was. She stood in it, fierce and magnetic, and wrote a legacy of her own making, one that still feels alive every time her voice rises from the screen. Number 4. The Serpent Girl. She bent her body until her spine curved like a question mark, and the crowd held its breath. They called her Serpentina, the girl with no bones. Her real name may have been Irene Farrell, but by the early 1900s, the posters had devoured her identity. She folded herself backward, wrapped her arms around herself, and let her joints slide beyond what anyone thought human. They said she couldn't walk and had to be carried to the stage. Early shows ran at places like Oakland's Globe Cafe. Later, she toured with the Marine Hippodrome as a Sea Tiny. By the 1940s, Ripley's picked up her act, photos staged to stoke legend. She spoke little, moved much, and left crowds shaken. Maybe she was a contortionist, maybe something rarer. Either way, Serpentina made spectacle into art. Long after her name blurred, the image remained. A woman who rewrote her body's limits and left audiences silent, unsure where flesh ended and myth began. Number 3. Captain Fred Walters. Fred was a soldier first. Boots polished, uniform pressed, orders followed. When an army doctor prescribed him a nerve treatment containing silver, he took it dutifully. Slowly, his skin shifted, not pale, not bruised, but blue. By 1891, the color was permanent. Out of options, he crossed the Atlantic and joined the American freak show circuit. On stage, he was the Blue Man, but beneath the paintless skin lived the same disciplined soldier. Crowds whispered, laughed, and stared. Inside, the silver was still working, poisoning him quietly. For more than 30 years, he toured, his body darkening and weakening, the stage his only home. In 1923, the silver reached his heart. He died far from Britain, known only by the name pinned to his skin. Some called it entertainment. Some called it a tragedy. It was a man trapped by circumstance, making a survival from what had been done to him. His story wasn't blue. It was a slow fading of everything but duty. Number 2. Anne E. Leake. Born to a wealthy Georgia farmer without arms, Anne E. Leake grew up in a home that taught faith, patience, and resilience. She refused to be pitied. Privately educated, deeply religious, and stubbornly gifted, she learned to play piano with her feet, sew and embroider with her toes, even braid hair. One of her pillows read, "Where hands are lacking, toes will do." Her life in a sentence. After the Civil War wiped out her family's fortune, Anne entered the circus not for glory but survival. She joined P.T. Barnum's American Museum in the 1860s, toured with Cooper and Bailey, and performed in Australia with Barnum and Bailey from 1876 to 1879, 1878. In 1871, she typed her autobiography entirely with her toes. She later married a steamship engineer named Thompson. No official record marks her death, but a 1900 photograph shows her older, scissors in her foot, still dignified. Anne Leake wasn't a sideshow act. She was a living answer to disbelief. Number 1. Carrie Akers. Carrie Akers stood barely over 3 feet tall and weighed more than 300 pounds. People stared at her body, but it was her fire they remembered. Joining P.T. Barnum's circus in the late 1880s as a fat dwarf lady, Carrie refused to play meek or sweet. She spoke up, argued, and wouldn't shrink to fit anyone's idea of a silent wonder. Management gave her a name meant to humiliate, the warthog, not for her looks, but for her refusal to obey. Most acts amazed without a voice. Carrie broke that rule. She lasted only a few years on the circuit, but her impact lingered. She demanded respect, not pity, and refused applause she hadn't earned. In an era when silence was survival, Carrie roared. She wasn't just a performer, she was the only one not playing a part. And though her act faded from the posters, the echo of her defiance still rattles against the cages that tried to contain her. If you've enjoyed this video, be sure to like, share, and subscribe for more content like this. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you very soon.